This is LRBT2, question number 9. So now we're looking for this example of the damaged radio. I absolutely love these questions. Anytime I see roll, I'm like, okay, thanks for giving us this piece. So we know that there's an example of a damaged radio before we even start reading. And if we have an example, examples do a couple of things. They can either prove the point or disprove the point. It depends on what the author is trying to do with the argument. So we're going to want to pay attention. So we've got a severe blow to the head that can cause one to lose consciousness. So that's a fact. From this, some people infer that consciousness is a product of the brain. So we have some people infer. This is a classic opinion being stated as a fact. It's just a type of fact. So some people infer this. They infer that consciousness comes from the brain, cannot survive bodily death, meaning that, like, I don't know, if bodily death, like, I guess if your brain dies, consciousness will not survive. That is what they're probably trying to get at. But a radio that becomes damaged may suddenly cease to broadcast the program it had been receiving. And we do not conclude from this that the program itself has ceased to exist. So I guess that's our example right there, real sneaky. A radio that becomes damaged. So what happens with that? We got our radio out here, like somebody went ahead and just kind of like rage quit on it. I have no idea. This is a really bad radio. Sorry about that, guys. I've got a little dial here. So we got our radio. Oh, it kind of looks like a person. Okay, cool. Cute. So we got our radio and, we got these broadcast signals and all of a sudden cuts off. But we don't say that the program over here ceased to exist. We just say that the radio is dead. Like, that's the only thing that happened over here. So they're using this as an example to emphasize their point. Our point is being made about like the brain and bodily death. So I guess like there's us. Something happens to our head. We don't say that consciousness goes away. Even though they're linked. So I digress. Let's just finish this paragraph. So similarly, more substantial evidence would be needed to conclude that consciousness does not survive bodily death. Yeah, so that's where they're going with this. So they're saying, let's say our head is that broken radio, means that we don't get any more consciousness, gone. And so some people think that consciousness is part of the brain. But our author is saying to do that, to make that assumption, it'd be like, saying that the radio broadcast or the radio program it just disappears because the radio is dead. When we know that, the broadcast is still probably there. In the same way, consciousness could still possibly be there. We can't rule it out. So it's helping them to prove their point, which, we know it's an example. Examples are existing to prove or disprove, right? So now we're going to get in here and look and see what's the best answer. So A, it is cited as evidence that consciousness does in fact survive bodily death. Not necessarily. We don't have any information. We're just saying that substantial evidence would be needed, or more substantial evidence. That's actually our conclusion, that last sentence. So we don't know that it does survive bodily death. Just that it could. We need more information. B, it is cited as a counterexample to a widely accepted belief about the nature of consciousness. Okay, so counterexample, cool, but we haven't fully disproved this yet. We've only said, we can't say it with certainty. The jury's still out. So that's really tricky. It's really, really tricky. If this was a true counterexample, our author would have concluded, therefore, consciousness positively does not survive. But we're not doing that. We're just saying, we have to consider this. C, it is cited as a case analysis. Well, I like that already, case analysis, to loss of consciousness, in which people do not draw the same sort of conclusion that some people draw about consciousness. So, case analogous, me and my English. So this is a case. It is analogous to the radio situation, us and our consciousness. And we don't draw the same kinds of conclusions. That's all it's trying to say. They're hoping that you don't pick this answer because it's clunky. But hey, we're better than that. We break things down. D, it is cited as the primary piece of evidence for the conclusion that the relationship of consciousness to the brain is analogous to that of a radio program to the radio that receives it. So this is where they're just trying to get clunky, and they're hoping you pick this because you see the word radio in the midst of the clunk. What was it saying? The primary piece of evidence for the conclusion, and which conclusion are they referencing? The relationship of consciousness to the brain is analogous to that of a radio. They're not making that claim. Their claim here is that substantial evidence, more substantial evidence would be needed. So we can go ahead and weed that out because that's not happening. That's not happening here, even though it is like a primary piece of evidence. And here too, the issue with evidence is that we're not proving anything definitively. We're just saying, it's a reminder that we need to, consider our options more broadly. E, it is cited as an example of a case in which something consisting purely of energy depends on the existence of something material to provide evidence of its existence. What in the world? So we do have an example, and this is a case, but we don't necessarily know that the broadcast or the consciousness are consisting of purely energy. We actually don't really know what consciousness is depending on. So for that reason, like, we don't have to get, all into all the weird drama. What am I saying? Drama. Just all of the weird jargon that's going on here. We don't need to fall for it because it's saying things that are not supported in the paragraph. They're just a far cry. We would just go with C, because even though it's a little bit of jargon, it's saying exactly what we need it to do. So just keep breaking these down into something you can understand and explain to a third grader, because it's going to really make sense. And that's why we would pick C.